Welcome back to the Lemon Factor. I'm Chad, and in today's video, I'm going to go through the top 10 most commonly asked questions found on Facebook pages related to the 10th generation Honda Accord. And of course, we're going to be focusing on performance. So I am a member of several of these pages, although I don't frequent them as much as I would like to, but it is clear that as old members move on to different platforms and new members come in, they're looking for the same information all the time. So there is a constant influx of repeat questions asked on these pages. And that's all right. It's totally understandable, although you can easily use that search function. But nonetheless, a lot of the commonly asked questions are the same questions asked on all of the pages. And in today's video, I'm going to do that. I am going to address 10 of the top 10 questions that I see, and hopefully this will help you out, especially if you're starting to get into the 10th generation Honda Accord platform and you're looking to modify your car. So this is a good place to start. Number one, what should I do to increase horsepower? What are my first modifications? What are the best modifications to make for the 10th generation Honda Accord? That question, although asked a lot, has a lot of different opinions out there. And if you're new to the channel, I have gone through the past several years, I have tested out numerous modifications, both on the dyno testing before and after to see how much horsepower and torque various modifications will produce on the 10th generation Honda Accord. I've also taken it out to do 0 to 60 runs and to the track to find out how quick it is, how fast it is. So my information is coming from my own personal experience in testing. With that said, I will tell you, here are some modifications that I don't believe will garner you a lot of horsepower, and personally, I don't think it's worth the money spent. First thing is an air intake. I don't care if it's open or closed. I do not think it warrants the $400 give or take price tag for that. Especially considering if you're looking to gain horsepower, it's going to be an enclosed system, and that means you're not going to hear a lot of the whooshing turbo intake sound that a lot of people want to hear. The next, and pretty much the most popular besides the air intake for any platform, is an exhaust. And on the 10th generation Honda Accord, there is the downpipe, the front pipe, and the front pipe back full exhaust system. I have not seen in my testing, even with a larger turbo, that there is any back pressure that needs to be freed up to give you any additional horsepower. I've installed a higher flowing, albeit a catted downpipe, and that has gained minimal horsepower. And those aren't easy to install. It's either going to cost you a good amount of money to have a mechanic install it, or a good amount of time for you to install it yourself. But I don't think it's worth it. What is worth it, what I have found worth it, there are 3 modifications that if I were to really narrow it down and say, hey, I want the best bang for the buck, number 1 is a K-tuner. And alternatively, maybe a Honda. I have used Honda in the past on other platforms, but not with the Accord. With the Accord, I've been using the K-tuner, whether it's the off-the-shelf tunes, the Variable Stage2, or a custom tune. That's where you're going to get the biggest bang for the buck. With the tune, you're going to be upping the boost pressure. And with that, you're probably going to introduce even more heat because you're compressing that air even more so. And I have found that an upgraded intercooler works very well with this platform. And it's not just in the hot weather. If you want repeated runs, whether it's 0 to 60 or quarter mile, an upgraded intercooler helps enable you to have the repeat runs and not get the heat soak that you would with the OEM intercooler. And the number 3, again, these are the biggest bang for the buck, is the use of ethanol. So that's getting an ethanol kit. You need something to read the ethanol readings and something to integrate with the K-tuner so you can make the adjustments once you are running a blend of ethanol. People are looking for that turbo noise, the whooshing sound, the either a blow off or the air intake or the spinning of the turbo. And unfortunately, as I've already mentioned, the air intake does not add any significant power. And if you were, any power you would gain would be more from a closed system, which really you're not going to hear that intake whooshing sound. You'd have to open it up. You'd have to open it up to the engine, the hot air in the engine, which you don't want to do in order for you to hear something. Also, blow-off valve, not suited very well for the 10th generation Honda Accord. Can it be done? Yes, it can be done. Is it worth it? I haven't done it. I will tell you that when I upgraded the intercooler, whether it's the PRL or the Mushimoto or any others, the bigger intercooler did induce more sounds. I did hear more sounds as the turbo was spooling up. And then, of course, upgrading the turbo itself. When I went from the Honda Accord OEM turbo to an FK8 hybrid, that bigger turbo, although not huge when it goes to upgrades for the 10th generation Honda Accord, although not huge, you definitely hear it. Number 3 is what's the best exhaust? And like I said, the exhaust, now I haven't tried it. I have not dyno tested exhaust. But I have also not seen any indication where the exhaust, the front pipe, and I have dyno tested the downpipe, that it is a restriction on the stock turbo. Maybe with a bigger turbo, but on the stock turbo, I don't see it as a restriction. I really don't think you're going to be gaining any horsepower, negligible horsepower gains at best. But I understand a lot of you will upgrade the exhaust because of the sound. And what's the best one? Well, there's a lot out there, and I've published a video going through the various exhausts that are available for the 10th generation Honda Accord, along with a lot of different sound clips. So if you're looking for an exhaust, you're looking for one that has a particular sound, go check out that video. There's a lot offered, especially now, ranging from 2.5-inch piping to a full 3-inch piping. I've installed lowering springs on the Honda Accord as opposed to installing coilovers. And one of the big reasons for that is I have the touring with the ADS, the active dampening system, and I enjoy the fact that I can move from the normal setting to a sport setting, and I can tell the change. It's a significant change in the feeling of the car, the RPMs, the steering, and the suspension, and I don't want to lose that. I just wanted to lower the car a little bit for aesthetics purposes to close that wheel gap, and I wanted things to tighten up a little bit more just for a little bit better cornering, for less squat and less dive. And that is what the iBox springs has provided, and I'm glad I installed them. I really enjoy them. I like them. So what's the question? The question is, a lot of people have asked, do I have problems with my shocks now that I've installed the upgraded iBox springs? That the belief is that they're going to wear out your shocks prematurely. And my experience, not just with the Honda Accord, is that I have not seen that to be the case for a modest drop with a modest increase in spring rate. So I'm thinking iBox, I'm thinking H&R, they have modest drops, very modest spring rate increases, as opposed to a big 2-inch drop and stiffer springs. And again, I do have a video that you can go take a look. I go through at least the springs that were offered at the time of producing that video, what's available. With the K-Tuner, it comes with off-the-shelf tunes. And most people jump right to a Stage 2 tune. And I've done that, and I've dyno tested that, and I've track tested that. I've also purchased separately the Fairable Stage 3 tune. And there are 2 separate tunes out there that some people love the Fairable Stage 3, some people love the off-the-shelf K-Tuner Stage 2. And they're very similar. According to my data logs, maybe the Fairable Stage 3 bumps up the boost pressure a little bit, or at least according to my data logs, I'm able to achieve and maintain a higher boost pressure, more so than with the K-Tuner Stage 2. Also, the K-Tuner Stage 2 runs much richer than what I've found in the Fairable Stage 3. And that is not to say that the Fairable Stage 3 runs lean. Both of them are pretty rich tunes. at least based on my experience. And I say that because I'm at high altitude, less oxygen, so less of a need for that additional fuel. So you may run an even leaner mixture than I do. But I digress on this one. So what's the difference? Which one is better? Should you get Faribault Stage 3 versus the off-the-shelf tune from K-Tuner? Each of them have a different dynograph curve, and you can feel it on the street. They both behave differently. Their peak power comes on differently at a different RPM, which makes it drive differently. So part of that answer is it depends on what you're looking for, which one you would like better. I personally enjoyed the Faribault Stage 3. I found it to run better on the car. It felt smoother on the car, and I like the characteristics of the Faribault Stage 3 tune. On to question number 6. I see this all the time from people that install the K-Tuner, and whether they're using the K-Tuner Stage 2 or the Faribault Stage 3 or even a custom tune, they're always asking, what are the K control numbers that I should be looking out for? What is normal and what is high? What is a number that should be concerning? And I've never seen over the years anything that's published, whether it's from K-Tuner or anyone else, that says, hey, this is a bad number, or above this number is bad, below this number is good. With that said, I'll tell you based on my experience, a good number, the lowest reading that I have ever seen, and quite frankly, I think it's the lowest number you can get, is a 0.49 for a K control number. Now, I've seen that vary just casual driving to 0.51. So right in that range, to me, seems like that's the baseline. If you're doing some serious pulls, wide open throttle pulls, personally, I don't want to see anything above 0.65-ish. I would say that if I had a 0.7 or above, and that happens routinely with wide open throttle, I would get a custom tune. I would look into it, right? I would do something about it. I wouldn't be so happy with it. At the end of the day, it really matters if that number is because you're actually getting knock, if you're getting detonation. And if you are getting detonation, is that causing damage? So it's a reflection of what is happening, but it's not really showing you the degree or intensity or severity of what's happening. So of course, this is all assuming you're running the highest octane you have access to, whether it's 91, unfortunately like me, or 93 octane. And if you are getting higher numbers, but only sporadically, only at certain times, only after continuous runs, you can put E85, a gallon or two of E85 in the tank with 91 and 93 octane. In essence, that is going to raise your octane level a bit, and that should help bring down your K control numbers. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, if you found it entertaining, if you want to help support the Lemon Factor, please consider hitting that super thanks button that can be found at the bottom of the video. How do you launch the car? How do you make sure that you can get the best times possible? How do I brake torque or turbo torque or brake boost? It's called different things, but it's all the same. It's been around for quite some time. It's not specific to a turbocharged car, but what you're doing in an automatic vehicle, in a 10-speed automatic Honda Accord, is with your left foot, you are holding on to the brake, and with your right foot, you're giving it gas. And the car is going to be held still, and your RPMs are going to go up. If you're in first gear, I think it goes up to 2,500. If you've manually put it into second gear and you're holding into second gear, it goes a little bit higher. I should know this. I do this all the time. But you're holding at a higher RPM. And when you're ready, you let go of that brake while mashing that gas and your car takes off. So it's got a little bit of RPM already built up, and with that RPM, a little bit of spool already built up into the turbo, so you can have a better launch instead of launching from a total standstill with no engine RPM behind you. Of course, with the additional horsepower and torque, you're probably going to start spinning your tires. Which leads me to question number 8. Motor mounts, torque mounts, engine mounts. Again, same name, same idea. For the Honda Accord, you have an upper mount and you have a rear or a lower mount, and those mounts help cradle the engine, and the mounts itself are meant to dissipate the shock from accelerating, where the engine is torquing itself, and it would then send all of that noise, vibration, the harshness into the frame, into the cabin of your car. So it's meant to give a more comfortable ride. What a lot of people like to do is upgrade those motor mounts to something stiffer. People do this because they believe it is going to prevent you from having any wheel hop and will give you added traction. That's not what they're meant for. If that's happening to you, good for you, right? You install motor mounts and it prevents you from getting wheel hop. I've never had wheel hop with the 10th generation. I have my tire spinning from loss of traction, but that is not wheel hop. Wheel hop is literally the front of your car bouncing a little bit. I spin my tires evenly, and it's because of all the torque down low, or now at this point, all the horsepower and torque that I have. But I firmly believe that you are not going to experience any significant increase in traction by installing motor mounts. So if motor mounts do not help with traction, what does? Tires. Tires. If you're jumping to motor mounts and you're still running all season tires, God forbid, hopefully you're not running the OEM tires, then you should seriously take a look at that. If you're not going to change the rims or the size, at least go to a stickier compound, go to a summer only or a high performance all season. It will be noticeable. If you're going to upgrade the rims, consider going to a tire that has a wire tread width. That should help a little bit with traction. Maybe going from that 235 to a 245, 55, or 265 like we have on our car. I've noticed a huge difference going from a 235 to a 265 width, and of course going to a dedicated summer tire. They are sticky, they are really good tires. They feel great on the road, not just for the traction from a standstill, but also in cornering and in braking. And lastly, question number 10 is, what's the best turbo? And I didn't put this on modifications on the best bang for your buck because it is rather expensive. And you will need to purchase some other modifications that in and by themselves aren't going to add any significant power gains, but because you're upgrading the turbo, you will need to upgrade other additional parts. And I have all sorts of information on various videos I've produced, but one video I put together was list the top 10 turbos. And I know a couple turbos have come out since then, but that question in and by itself, what is the best turbo? That is a loaded question. Are you asking which turbo is the most reliable? Stick with your OEM Honda Accord turbo. If you're looking for which turbo will produce the most horsepower, given turbo specs and everything else being equal, and assuming you can provide enough fuel to the engine, that's a different answer. You know, those bigger turbos can produce a lot of power, but it's much further on in the RPM range, and as such, you're going to give up power lower in the RPMs where you're driving the car day to day, while you're driving it on the highway, where you're suburban driving. It's going to feel slower. Sure, you're going to have all that additional horsepower up high, but the only time you're going to experience that is if you're revving it to redline and you're shifting at redline. Think about, wide open throttle pulls, quarter-mile pulls. Aside from that, you're not going to see a lot of that. But that doesn't mean that that may not be the right turbo for you. If that's what you're looking for, great. I only bring that up because there's also a bunch of turbos that are offered that are hybrid or not as large, which means they're going to give you more horsepower than what the small OEM turbo will produce. It will shift your torque and your power curve, and it'll do so in a manner that hopefully still keeps it in the RPM range where you can experience that in daily driving. And if you do happen to go to a track or do some wide open throttle pulls, you're not going to experience the drop off in power up near redline like you do with the Honda Accord. So You need to figure out what you're looking for from the car, from upgrading the turbo, before you can get an answer of what turbo is best for you. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, leave a comment below, send me an email. I'd be glad to answer your questions. But I think that's it for today. Thank you very much for joining, and until next time.